Hi, Claire and James here. Just before we get stuck into this week's episode, we wanted to let you know the exciting news that the Midlife Reset audit is now live. This is a first of its kind personalised diagnostic tool designed for midlifers by midlifers.
In just 3 minutes, the audit will help you pinpoint what's really holding you back from living your healthiest, happiest midlife, and most importantly, provide tailored strategies on how to take back control. Midlife doesn't have to be a time of uncertainty. It can be an era of growth, discovery, and well-being. So to go ahead and take the audit, go to themidlifementors.com/audit.
On this week's episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast, we're absolutely thrilled to be joined by Kate Muir, who is well known for being the creator and producer of the groundbreaking documentary with Davina McCall on the menopause, which premiered in 2021 and changed the menopause conversation in the UK forever.
As a women's health advocate and author of books on the menopause and the pill, this conversation with Kate is incredibly uplifting, insightful and informative. She shares how she had her own midlife crisis brought on by the menopause, and brilliantly, how the initial rejections for her documentary concept on the menopause fueled her passion to get the message out there even more, and eventually led to Channel 4 and Davina McCall becoming involved.
Kate talks about HRT, the importance of combining it with lifestyle factors such as weightlifting and nutrition, and also the impact menopause has on our brain health. We know you're going to find this a fascinating episode, and we can't wait to hear your feedback.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to a new episode in 2025 of the Midlife Mentors podcast with me, James.
And me, Claire. Well, we hope you had a lovely Christmas and wonderful New Year. We're still wondering how much we can still say to people, Happy New Year, like when the cut-off point is. Probably about now.
I think we've passed it. Yeah. I think we've definitely passed it.
I think about now. So what have we been up to? Just been getting our teeth into some projects. James has a very exciting project that's coming out in a couple of months that we'll be able to talk about really shortly.
Very shortly.
So yeah, it's been a great start to the new year.
It has. Just been enjoying the festivities. I mean, I've learned having an alcohol-free partner means that on Christmas Day, rather than lazing in bed, you get prodded going, come on, let's go for a walk, even though it's not light outside yet. That is interesting.
Sorry about that.
But I am reaping the benefits of I drank far less over the festive period as a result of Claire being alcohol-free. And of course, I am doing dry January myself. Of
course. But yeah, actually, it was my first Christmas alcohol-free. And it was a bit of a struggle, I have to say. I do like my mulled wine. So James pointed out that he only got through one bottle of mulled wine this year instead of 10, which was last year's intake. So yeah, but it was really lovely and ready for a wonderful 2025. But without further ado, we are very, very excited by our guest today. I'm so thrilled that this lovely lady has agreed to be on our podcast. Introducing Kate Muir. Kate is a women's health expert, a documentary maker, and author of books on the menopause and the pill. Kate is probably best known for being the creator and producer of 2 documentaries on the menopause, including Davina McCall, Sex, Myths and the Menopause, which I'm sure many of our listeners have watched. So, Kate, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year. Of course, in Scotland, we say Happy New Year for at least a month.
Oh, good.
So don't worry about that. I'm like saying it in February to people, and they're like, "What's wrong with her?" Because I come from Glasgow originally, so it really is. Yeah, you're right to be saying that.
Thank you,
also,
Kate.
we're talking about new things and new changes, and that's what you do on your podcast, isn't it? So it's good that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we, when this goes out, actually, we'd have run already. Our first podcast episode of 2025 was all around goal setting, but a fun and insightful way of doing that. So it's a really good way of kind of setting yourself up for the new year. But like, why don't we dive into asking? Yes,
I've got a first question. Hey, how did you get into this field? How did you end up
Great
kind
question.
of specializing in health, particularly around female reproductive health, and then from that going into production of such great documentaries? How did that all happen?
Well, it was all a big mistake. So I was the chief film critic at the Times, and I started having memory problems. And I was in my late 40s, and I was writing a shopping list one day, actually. And I thought, oh, I must shave my legs. And I wrote down the word shaver, and I thought, there's definitely another word for that thing. And about 15 minutes later, I remembered the word razor. And I really, really panicked because my mum had died of Alzheimer's the year before. I'd watched her lose lots of nouns over time, and kind of cover up for them. And I'd been remembering all the names of these films, but occasionally not. And I was in a complete panic. And this was a good probably 8 years ago, before the big menopause movement, which we're all part of, had occurred. And so nobody knew anything. The word peri-menopause wasn't mentioned on the NHS website. As far as we knew, it didn't exist. I went to see my doctor. And I also had incredible heart palpitations in the middle of the night. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. Are you saying you get them too, Claire?
Yes. Sorry for listeners, we're actually doing this on Zoom, so I just annoyingly actually just pointed to myself and said that was the heart palpitations were frightening for me. That happened about 3 years ago. Like my lung capacity, which is I felt breathless, and I had heart palpitations and night sweats at about the age of 43. So
yeah. I mean, it was mad. So I got those, and I thought it had nothing to do with the menopause because I wasn't really getting hot flushes that much. And I just thought, oh, no, I'm going to have a heart attack and I've got Alzheimer's. And as it turned out, I rang all my friends, having been to the NHS and had my heart tested, and they said, you're just drinking too much coffee. Rubbish. And all various friends who worked in quite high places in the Times and were women of a certain age, and various people like that. And I rang them up and I said, I think I've got Alzheimer's. I can't remember things. I've got heart palpitations. And they went, oh, you just got menopause. Go and see this private doctor. And of course, I went to the private doctor in London. I got HRT. I got estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone straight away. And straight away, within the night, my heart palpitations left. That was it. They were gone. Any other symptoms like sore joints when I was running, the occasional kind of night sweat, it just all went within a week. And I realized my memory came back. I was remembering the word razor. I was remembering all the films. I can talk for an hour now without notes. And literally, I thought, this has been a miracle for me, actually. And I was a sort of, hardworking mum of 3 kids, working at the Times. I thought I could cope with anything. And this very humbling thing hit me, the menopause, and really crashed me. And there weren't kind of physical symptoms I could overcome by doing a bit of yoga. It was my memory. It was my heart. It wasn't like eating another vegetable was going to make any difference whatsoever to that. And at that point, I understood about HRT, and then I eventually got it on the NHS, and I found out about the safer kinds of HRT, and all these things happened. But what I realized was it was my job to tell other people this. And how was I going to tell other people this? And then I left the Times and I did a film course, film studies, just for 6 months, just part-time. And I vaguely learned how to write a script and make a documentary, but I had no idea what I was doing. And eventually I wrote a proposal for this menopause film, and we managed to sell it to Channel 4, and then we got Davina on board afterwards.
Wow.
So I just thought, I have to tell people this, and I have to explain that HRT is much safer than you thought it was 20 years ago, and that it affects your mental health and your memory and your brain and your heart, and never mind the blooming hot flushes. That's just, another symptom, and that people were getting it so wrong and not seeing it as something in the brain, but something that you could watch someone's face go red, and I realized what a profound thing hormones, profound effect they had in our lives. So that's how it began.
That's an incredible story.
I love that.
Really inspiring. So I want to say, like, you took a personal experience there and really went on a mission with it. And something we talk about a lot on the podcast, at midlife, we get more risk averse and people but you left your job at the Times to go, right, I'm going to learn like how to write a screenplay, a proposal, and you took it and you sold it. It's just incredible.
Yeah,
Well
I
done.
suppose I was already doing the screenplay thing before the menopause sort of car crash totally came together. But it all kind of worked as a real change in my life and a midlife. It was a midlife crisis, which became a kind of midlife vocation of some kind, you know,
Love
and
that.
has stayed that way, which has been and I suppose it's been a great experience for me getting kind of kicked in the face and then crawling back up again. And just kind of struggling, you know, and also taking a menopause documentary to lots of different channels and lots of different production companies who all said, no, we're not making a film about old people. And we're going, wait a minute. Lots of people are 40 and some are 20 who are in the menopause, you know, and just hold on a sec. So that was, you know, and I got very angry. And,
Yes.
you know, I was like, yeah, we're gonna do this. And there were so many other angry women out there who wanted to talk about it. You know, we were just like a tipping point, you know.
Yeah. I think it needed to be said at that exact time that you hit the market, actually.
Yeah.
I think, but also it really is interesting. Again, we talk about this a lot on the podcast. It was almost like we take those challenges and they are meant for us. It's almost like we're meant to go through those in order to find that gift that we're supposed to share with the world. And I think we can take those dark nights of the soul and then transform them. So even though it felt like a midlife crisis when you were going through it, it was like coming towards that midlife reinvention of yourself, really.
Yeah. Your shit is your superpower.
Yeah, I love that. And can I ask, actually, Kate, like, how did Davina come into the whole equation? Did you already know her? Was she already talking about this?
No, she wasn't. She hadn't said anything
Okay.
at all. So I'd written the proposal and I sold it to Channel 4, and then we got shut down in lockdown and we didn't have a presenter, disappeared. And then I had to kind of sell it and we had to get a new presenter. And my friend Lorraine Candy, who makes postcards from Midlife,
Yes.
had Davina's phone number. So I got it off her and she texted Davina. She said, this mad woman, Kate, will call you to talk about the menopause. Just take the call. She may be mad. And I rang Davina and she was driving back to Tunbridge Wells. So she was in her car for an hour. And I said, this is my menopause. This is what happened to me. I hear you've been in your menopause and you're only in your 40s. This is why I want to make a documentary, blah, 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 blah. And by the time she got to Tunbridge Wells, she said, oh, fuck it, I'll do it.
Oh, incredible.
So it was great.
That's so awesome.
She turned out to be amazing because once she engaged with the hormones and the science and really, you know, we all learned stuff as we went along making this and researching it. And by the time we'd done 2 documentaries and then she brought out a book, I brought out a book, we really, you know, were doing menopause and she became an expert. I mean, not a medical expert, but an expert, which is unusual for a presenter. Let's just say you don't get that very often. You know, they come to they take the money and they leave, and you know, after the filming finishes. But for her, it became really meaningful for her. Actually, once she realized the huge effect she could have on lots of women through Instagram, etc. So, you know, we were really lucky. It's like it all came together. You know, it was like a big snowball effect.
It's amazing. It really is. And actually, she then took that because of her own experience. Again, it's a bit like you, her own experience made her such an advocate for that. And actually, we hear stories all the time about this documentary because we speak to menopausal women all the time. And we also speak to midlife men, right? And so many midlife men have even said, oh, my wife sat me down in front of, you must hear this as well. My wife sat me down in front of that documentary and I now understand what she's going through a lot more. Honestly, it changed the landscape in our private life, but also I think professionally as well, because of this snowball effect. Particularly with that documentary, I truly believe that that's why organisations were also more open to looking at menopause policy and supporting women going through the menopause in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that's true. Also, it is such a win-win in the workplace.
Yes.
And, you know, one of the things about the whole menopause conversation, I go and give lots of talks to kind of banks and schools and all these places. And you go in and you say, everything I'm going to tell you right now is positive. Everything about the menopause is positive, and you can, you know, ride with it. You can fix it. You can change it. You can use it. But obviously one of my big parts of my conversation is HRT, all the alternatives. You cannot face the menopause and just say, I'll sail through it, because guess what, Ewan? It's going to affect your brain, your bone density, your microbiome. Everything about your hormones going away isn't good. But you can do so many things to change. But you actually have to look at this point, and maybe you've given up alcohol or whatever. You have to look at this point and make a set of changes, or else you will, or else you're at risk of diabetes, of heart disease, and none of us can see into the future. But, we need to do that more, and in a positive way, say, here, I mean, one of the things I'm writing about is the 4 quarters of life. And I know this is slightly off the menopause, but I'm sure you've heard it, like up until 25. There's a woman called Aviva Wittenberg-Cox that writes about this in the workplace. And up until 25, that's when you're growing, and 25 to 50 is achieving, when you're doing your career or your kids or whatever. And then 50 to 75 is becoming. That's when you do the most amazing things in your life. And then 75 onwards is harvesting. Don't quite know what that means. But I love that that's what we're looking at, that period of our life. And that the idea that you are not going to work. I mean, I don't have a proper pension. I'm going to work till I'm 75, and lots of women don't, because they've been on and off with their jobs and schools. So, it really is very important to tackle menopause head on in a positive way, I think.
Yeah. Totally.
Absolutely.
I think we always say that, don't we? When we go in to do workshops in corporates as well, and I love the fact that actually James goes in and talks about the menopause to men and women, because it's a different perspective. But always it's okay. There's a lot of there can be a lot of negativity around menopause, a lot of fear about going through it, but making sure that we have that positivity around it, that we can take control, that we can make sure that it's a healthier way to go through it, rather than just ignoring it. Really on the same page.
And clearly, like, through your experience, you've learned a lot about the hormones, the menopause. Can you just give us a quick overview for those that maybe are new to it? Like, what is changing? What are the hormone shifts that happen at midlife, and how do they affect women?
Well, you've got 3 main hormones as women, which are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which is a female hormone, which you have a huge amount of in your late teens, early 20s, even more than estrogen. Testosterone being completely ignored as a female hormone due to enormous medical bias of all these years. But anyway, as you hit, depending on when you hit menopause, it might be your early 40s, but say on average it's 51. But in the 5-10 years before that, your hormones are draining away, and particularly estrogen and progesterone drain away. But guess what? They don't do it in an organized manner. The estrogen leaps up and down, literally like a roller coaster, sometimes higher than it's ever been normally in your normal cycle. And the progesterone goes steadily down. And because the progesterone is your calming kind of sleep hormone, it also protects the lining of your womb. So when the progesterone is running out, but the estrogen is going bonkers, you can get these huge periods as well at the same time in your 40s. The tsunami period, 44% of people get tsunami periods.
I've never heard of that phrase.
Nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you that. And you're sitting on the tube going, oh my God.
Kate. Yeah.
I didn't know when this was going to come.
Yeah.
And, it really is, it's just bloody awful, actually, literally. And no one tells you about that. Your doctor doesn't tell you about it. It's not part of the story when your mum says, and here's your first Tampax. And they don't go, and when you're 40, you'll have these big floody, tell us, because then we can do something about it. And often people need a little bit more progesterone before they need their estrogen topped up, because that can calm that whole process down. But it's not necessarily what the NHS is across at all. It's sort of kind of complicated to titrate that exactly for women. So anyway, your estrogen going bonkers and then crashing, your progesterone crashing. And at that point, your testosterone is going down slowly. I mean, it's about half of what it was, when you were in your 20s or whatever. But still, you're on this incredible hormonal low, and hormones affect every single part of your body. So they affect your brain, they affect your stomach, they affect your joints, they affect your bones. And already in peri-menopause, you have got bone loss, because the hormones that work your bones are disappearing. So you want to be doing kind of weight bearing exercise in your late 40s to do, to make up for that. And obviously, I mean, my main thing, and I've written a chapter on this in my next book, is I'm really interested in how the brain changes when these hormones leave. And basically, when the estrogen and progesterone go, estrogen fueled the glucose mechanism in your brain. So basically, estrogen was the petrol. And the petrol disappears, and your brain really, that's when you get those kind of outages in perimenopause of memory. And lots of people get it back afterwards, but they have that period of complete chaos because the estrogen has gone. And your brain panics, and then it says, I have to get fuel from somewhere else. And it increases the amount of blood it pumps to the brain. So you're basically changing from petrol to diesel. Let's keep it in man terms here. Petrol to diesel. And when you put petrol in a diesel car, it all goes bonkers. So you're basically changing fuel. And nobody really understands that. And your brain rewires. And they've got sort of scans of normal brains. They've not got scans of brains on HRT in any detail at the moment. But on a regular menopausal brain, the grey matter goes down in perimenopause and then goes up again afterwards, but perhaps in different places. We don't know. It's a bit like the rewiring of pregnancy. The white matter, which is your kind of connective kind of motorway in your brain, goes down. We don't know what happens after that. They haven't really looked at it, but they've got scans from about 45 to 55. And you can see that basically your white matter is changing, your grey matter is changing, the fuel that's in your brain is changing. And the other thing that's happening is that if you don't have your hormones, more amyloid plaques are building up, which could be the precursor to Alzheimer's, not always. So this is all going on in your brain, never mind the rest of your body. And the idea that we, throw menopause away and say, a couple of hot flushes, you'll be fine. No, you won't. You're being completely rewired and your brain will behave differently. And is that good? Will the extra grey matter be better? Will your brain rewire differently on HRT? So these are all questions that, because nobody bothers to fund the science around this hardly at all, we haven't asked yet, but we are asking them now. But what you just need to understand as an ordinary person is, yes, there is chaos in your head. Not everybody, but, most of us experience this chaos and, emotional dysregulation and kind of just crying sometimes all the time, all sorts of things. And that you are normal. And this is a normal part of life that we agree with in pregnancy. Oh, baby brain. Oh, they get it together afterwards.
That's so true.
But menopause brain is a thing. It's a truth. It's a rewiring. And yeah. we are really plastic and brilliant at it. We are brilliant at rewiring. Women are brilliant.
Well, we're just brilliant.
But it is a chunky bit of science that's about us. And actually, it matters.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you talking about that. Something we talk about all the time is I think there's a real focus in modern culture on the kind of physical aspects. So, we know for women going through menopause, men later in life with low testosterone, there's physical effects. We lose muscle mass, we put on more body fat, lower bone density. There's not enough focus, I don't think, on the psychological aspects. And we understand, I need to eat more healthily, or I should go to the gym and do weight bearing exercise. But actually, we need to be doing stuff to help train our brain and improve our psychology as well. Because as you mentioned there, these hormonal changes are driving psychological changes, neurotransmitter changes, emotional changes. And unless we're aware of that and actively working on those, we wouldn't just leave our body. We know it's going to get worse. So we have to work on our psychology as well.
Yeah. So, and also there's been lots of new studies. I mean, this sort of information didn't exist 5 years ago, even when I was first working in this area. But there's been lots of good studies out of Cardiff University that show that bipolar disorder and depression in the big UK biobank sort of studies pops up at perimenopause. It just suddenly takes a big leap. And that is because your brain is rewiring and all these sort of disorders that maybe disappeared after you being a teenager or whatever, or just never appeared, pop up in perimenopause. But, the NHS latest guidelines and the NICE guidelines, they don't come anywhere near understanding any of this. And it's a great mistake that nobody is taking this seriously enough and putting their minds to it. And I'm glad that we are.
Yes.
But it's really interesting. It's coming from social media and podcasts. The science is coming up rather than down.
Following it. Exactly.
And we are questioning and we are asking. And also because you can get every single science paper online pretty well now, they're all open access, or a lot of them are. You can look up what's happening to your brain if you want, in Nature magazine or whatever it is. So we are not, we can get information and we can research ourselves. And I think that's particularly what women do. I think, I don't know, James, men, do they spend as much time poking around looking at their own health? I don't know.
Oh, sadly, my own experience and all the research says the short answer to that is no. Of course, there'll be exceptions, but men are, they don't maintain their social relationships as well as women, so they start to feel more isolated. Even when they do maintain them, they don't open up and be vulnerable to talk about the things that are bothering them. They won't go to their health providers until something really serious happens. And there's a real mindset of the stoicism. I need to sort this out myself, strong and silent. And it's causing a male mental health crisis, if we're honest. I think start having lots more open conversations as men, be more vulnerable about what we're experiencing and looking for the solutions to it as well. But sadly, no, I don't think men do spend time looking at this and don't put their hands up to ask for help when they need it either. So that's something that we're trying to change.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a male doctor and deals with low testosterone, and he constantly finds that wives or partners are bringing their husband and go, I've just got HRT. Can you give him some? And often they do have a low level of testosterone, and they're getting the same level of, it's not necessarily just about sex, but about depression, about putting on weight, about low mood, about fatigue, a lot of fatigue. And, just getting a testosterone test, and I'm sure you've done stuff on it, but finding out about that, it's about 5-10% of people. And it's really worth it, and it's such a fantastic thing and such a quick answer for some people.
I know. I mean, we say like 5-10%. I think that might be on the low side, because there's some research that 78% of men have never even heard of low testosterone or andropause. They don't even know it's a thing that they should be looking out for.
Yeah.
And when men do present to the doctor and say, I'm tired, I'm lethargic, they're most often prescribed is the tired all the time test, TAT, which this is like a battery of things. One thing it doesn't test for, testosterone levels. So again, I think there's a big job to do in raising awareness around low testosterone in midlife men, and again the impacts that can have and the solutions around it.
And I do love what you said there, Kate, because I have, obviously James coaches a lot of men through midlife and I coach women. There is an overlap, but a lot of the time it does come from that conversation that opens up with us women about, okay, now I understand more about my hormones. It's made me compassionate and want to understand the hormonal changes in my partner. And then once they do, then that opens up those channels of communication. And then we realize, I mean, with your book that's coming out as well, we'll talk about shortly, that we're both going through, men and women are going through hormonal changes, and it will impact your relationship, it impacts work and all that kind of stuff. So I notice a lot, it's women going, I've gone on HRT, how can I help my my partner with what he's going through?
I mean, HRT is fantastic. I mean, you've got to do the other lifestyle stuff too, because it does about 90%, but you've got 10% of so that really is worth covering. But the idea that it's an either or that you can do it all by doing your yoga and eating your the right food, it's just wrong. And on the whole, having done all this work over 5 years, I feel very strongly that the safer forms of HRT, the body identical kind that are a copy of your own hormones and made from soy, and really have been shown in the big observational studies to be way, way, way safer than anything we've ever had before, and in fact brilliant on the whole. And the idea that but that's not in the kind of medical books, because they're still studying the old kind of HRT and using the old studies. And so many of these old studies mix up the two kinds of HRT, and they behave in completely different ways. And if you look at your sort of veins and arteries, the new HRT, the natural estrogen, the estradiol, it's basically like WD-40 in your veins and arteries. It goes through, it's not going to cause you to have, clots. It's really, really good for preventing future cardiovascular disease. And we've got papers showing that. And the old stuff has got a chance at a certain point of creating, just as the pill does, the old kind of synthetic hormones have got a chance of creating clots. And the idea that we put them in the same basket and talk about them with the same words, HRT, I mean, I always say body identical HRT to try and differentiate.
Yes.
But for ordinary people who are just going, oh, hormones, what is it? What does that all mean? It's a real scandal that the medical profession is not explaining this really, really clearly to women on the NHS website. It doesn't explain it clearly enough. It does vaguely.
Yeah.
But you need to make these things really simple and go, this would be better for the majority of people. Why don't you try this first? And it's just kind of shocking that nobody cares and they're still prescribing stuff that's a bit out of date and not great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what we hear from female clients all the time. I went to my GP and they've put me on HRT. And we're like, well, what's the balance between progesterone? And I don't know. I've just got a gel that I put on. Have you had your hormone levels tested since? No. And they're like, it doesn't seem to make any difference to me because obviously it's not individuated for their experience and their hormone level. So I think that is a massive issue that hopefully the NHS, amongst its many problems, will get round to resolving.
But the minute you put someone on HRT and you get them settled, maybe 2 appointments, you've got them settled in the right amount and they're absorbing the right amount. Their hot flushes have gone, because that's a way of telling, you can see, oh, the hot flushes are still there. You're not absorbing it, or whatever. I mean, it's not simple, but it's not bad. And the minute you've got someone on HRT, you've lowered their risk of osteoporosis, you've lowered their risk of diabetes, you've lowered the risk of cardiovascular disease, and you've lowered their risk of Alzheimer's. How much is that going to save you in the long run? I mean, I just did a big piece for the Observer magazine a couple of months ago on osteoporosis. And basically, taking HRT increases your bone density by around between 6 and 10% over a couple of years. And, do we want to be on Zimmer frames, or do we want to get the message out about HRT? And you just think, if 1 in 2 women get osteoporosis and break a bone, get an osteoporotic fracture over 50. And, you just see that suffering on the street where you see people walking bent.
And it's a shocking stat.
Oh my God. Why
shock.
didn't we tell people that
I know
bones make bones? 3 words.
Yes.
Yeah. And the osteoporosis surgeons, they're not prescribing HRT even after someone's been in to try and bring them back.
It's just crazy.
And so it's a huge hole in medicine that I have spent my whole time shouting about.
I love that. We can hear the passion in how it's coming across, and it is crazy. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, actually, about that combined approach to managing a healthy menopause. It is really exciting with all the work everyone's been doing, but particularly the stuff that you've been doing out there, raising awareness of HRT and the different forms of HRT. That's incredible. But you did touch on something there that we believe very, very, very important, is lifestyle factors beyond medication. How can factors like nutrition, exercise, stress management support, how can that help women with their menopause?
Well, nutrition is huge, because when estrogen goes, as it does in your brain, it disappears in your microbiome and you process food differently. And the big Zoe studies show that it's different. And so you need to eat differently, and you will react to the banana you ate 10 years ago differently now, which is kind of weird, but you can kind of work out what really works for you. And also eating all those polyphenols, the rainbow of vegetables, that is WD-40 in your veins too, those sort of polyphenols. So you've got to think about that kind of thing, and not just eating less, but eating colors, and things like that. So there's that. And I suppose one of the things, I was talking to a friend who's not an HRT this morning, but had an early menopause, and about her weight training. And one of the studies I just read recently from America was that you can't just, the NHS says, oh, you might get osteoporosis, take a walk every day and maybe lift some weights. No use. What you've got to do is high intensity weight training. So you've got to lift like 4 times till you can't lift at all. You have to lift really, really heavy weights. You have to stomp up and down the stairs. And they did a study in America called the Lift More study. And they got a bunch of people doing walking and, Pilates or whatever. And then they got a bunch of people doing heavy weights. And their bone density went up by 3% in 8 months. So, you could do 6% presumably in a couple of years. And so heavy weight training changes your bone density, and so does improving your muscle. Muscle affects everything. And there's some really interesting new scans that show really ripping your muscle and getting your muscle going has a profound effect on something that's happening in your brain as well. And they're beginning to see the brain connection. All that is just really, really exciting. Again, I'm not an expert on stress, but of course, you do not want to be stressed. It's one of the 4 pillars, isn't it, of what you've got to do, because stress just destroys you. And we live these terrible lives. I've also done a kind of thing about digital health and the stress of, stress of the phone. And we live our lives so badly, but you've got to make such an effort to do the other things, and we should make all of this more natural. But I think if we told people much more about this is what your bone density could do, this is the magic you can do on yourself. You can grow your bones by 3% or 5% if you lift some weights. When can you turn yourself around in that kind of way in life? You can make these incredible differences to your microbiome, to your vagibiome, to your bone density, to how your brain works. It really, I agree.
Well,
You've got to do the other things. And also in the end, you feel great, if you do. I mean,
you get that endorphin rush after you exercise.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly. It's not just about how we look, and it's not the external stuff. It's about future-proofing our body, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we do see there is so much. It is all about balance. Like life is, balance is one of those things that we want, but we're always trying to achieve. But I do think just sticking to one thing like HRT and then not even thinking about exercise, nutrition, managing those stress levels, it's really the wrong approach. It is that integrated, holistic approach that we need. It's not a magic pill. We need to take responsibility and control of our own lives.
Yeah. I also think that making something a habit that you do with someone else, so getting a
accountability
or a less best friend to go with you to do something. And for the last 3 years, I've been swimming in the Lido in Parliament Hill outdoors, and I have to say I swam yesterday as it was snowing.
Oh,
I've got a little top sort of wetsuit, that covers my arm, but not the rest of my body. And so I did 3 lengths, but I do it with my friend Deborah Ross, who's a film critic and a TV critic. And we meet Monday, Wednesday, and we meet 3 times a week. And because she has to drive there and I have to walk there, if we don't turn up, it's really, really bad, because the other person hasn't turned up and has failed the other person, whatever the weather. So we have to turn up when it snows, in a way that you would just stay in bed, obviously.
Of course.
Not
everything is screaming, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Like what?
So I do think, we all have these great resolutions. I'll do this, I'll do that. But doing it with someone, particularly exercise, and particularly making it stupid, involving stupid costumes or dry robes or whatever it is, becoming part of a cult of some kind. That really helped me to do it. I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been forced.
We swim at the mixed ponds.
Right. Oh, God.
So that we actually have done it less this year. We didn't go yesterday, but cracking the ice to go in last year was an interesting, I'd say, high / low. I mean, like, we were getting in, and I think it's amazing that you did 3 lengths. That's way better. We're in and out.
They have hot showers. They have hot showers at the Lido, because you don't have hot showers at the pond. No. I couldn't do the pond because I get those blue fingers.
Me too.
I wouldn't make it back. So I do need a hot shower afterwards. But
don't blame you.
What's the temperature in the Lido at the moment?
It was 4 degrees.
Oh yeah. Well,
when it was snowing.
well done you though, Kate. That is amazing. And like the accountability thing is the accountability is missing. It's the missing secret sauce to a lot of success. You know, you set goals and you're trying to do it yourself. You haven't surrounded yourself necessarily with the right people, and that's, you know, that's one of the key missing things, is having that accountability, that person that inspires you, motivates you.
I just want to touch on something you said. You mentioned their weight training. And I think a lot of people, and women more than men, I think, still have a lot of resistance to resistance training. And so they just don't want to do it. But I want to re-emphasize what you said there. There's so much research coming now showing that there's a link between weight training in particular and a decreased risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. And again, that doesn't really make sense. Like, oh, why does lifting weights make my brain? But there is a link there now. It is that there's so many benefits to it that if you're listening to this, listeners, and you're not weight training, you just need to be right.
And again, that's one to do with a friend, isn't it? And make it laugh, and, you know, go to your local gym or go and lift rocks on a hill. You don't have to. You know, you don't have to go somewhere, actually. You can just do it anywhere. But, you know, I think it would help to get it done right the first couple of times so you don't strain anything. But
well, that's why part of our programs that we've always run, that's, you know, the weight training and the fitness side of things is always super important. But I think knowing what you're doing, making sure you're safe, you know, because at the end of the day, we have more risk of injury at this age. So making sure that your form is correct, that you've got a professional showing you how to do it, actually. But like, you don't have to go into a gym. People find that quite intimidating. A lot of our clients weight train at home and just build up. But making it fun and having that accountability is key.
Right. So this has been absolutely fascinating.
It's amazing, Kate.
But I know you've got a new project on the go, which is about having a magnificent midlife crisis. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So obviously I had my own midlife crisis, which I reveal in the book. But what became clear to me, the book's called How to Have a Magnificent Midlife Crisis. And I think you almost need to go through a crisis to kind of find yourself at the other side and to grow up rather than grow old. And, the idea that we'll be exactly the same person, at 50, I mean, we have changed. And, maybe we married the wrong people, maybe we're in the wrong job. There's all that thing. So basically, I throw all the toys out the pram and question everything. So I talk really seriously about mental health in peri-menopause and menopause and around that time, and mental health and hormones and how your brain rewires. So that's a very key part of the book. The other parts, though, are quite good fun, which is things like, your digital health, what to do about that, when to kill your phone. Never buy a toilet roll holder with a little phone shelf above it. That's a really good.
I didn't even know you could get such a thing.
You can get them in John Lewis. Things like that.
Look at your phone.
Keep your phone in a cupboard in the kitchen. So I've got all this sort of team of experts who often were great friends, but have told me various things. How to get divorced well. How to go on a massive guided, really brilliant psilocybin trip, and the effects of, psychedelics and depression and the new science on that. Lots of really good fun things, as well as saying, there's a chapter, how not to get osteoporosis, how not to get Alzheimer's, how not to get UTIs. Things like that. Just explain to people that you have a veggie biome, and you've got to look after it. And here's what's in it. And I think it's a combination of really brilliant, exciting new science and having a bit of a laugh, which I haven't really been able to have before. So I've been able to do the two. And all these women who I've met over the last 5 years, I've just gathered them up, and they have come and told me their stories. And most of them have agreed to be named, being very, very honest about their transformations. And it goes from shit to brilliant most of the time. Amazing. And they are so inspirational and so courageous. So it's their book, and it's also sort of my book. So I've had a lot of fun writing it, but it's got a lot of science. It's got, because you've got all these kind of, new agey books. Oh, you should do this, and it should be more fun. You should be more spiritual, whatever, Yes. And you really need the rock solid science under there.
Oh,
you don't know what's happening in your brain. Yeah, no, that's what I'm doing. I hope people will be inspired to do daft stuff when they read it and change their lives. And just
when is it coming out?
It's coming out in the summer.
Perfect.
And so summer 2025, How to Have a Magnificent Midlife Crisis from Simon and Schuster. So
I have
don't know the
to
exact date yet.
I have to say, I agree with you. There are some of these woo-woo books out there about how to have, that spiritual take, I suppose, on midlife crisis. And listen, I'm quite a spiritual person. I really invest quite a lot of time and energy in that. But I'm also very practical. And I also like the science. I like to know why things are happening. And, there's that side as well. So I don't say this very frequently about books about midlife, but I'm genuinely very, very excited to read that. Just having spoken to you, I can see that there's going to be that real fun element, kind of, you're talking about psychospilling as well. Wow, that's exciting. And the science behind things. So honestly, listeners, that'll be one on your book list in the summer. Thank you.
Well, we'd love to have you back on when that's out.
Oh, yeah. Well, once I'll get you sent an early copy and you can... If there's something
bless you.
Thank you so wonderful.
Much.
And we would love you back on to talk about that. Once we've read through it, I'm sure we'll have lots of discussions come from it. So if you'd be happy to come back on, we'd love you on.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thank you for having me on. And really interesting to chat to you.
It's been great having you on.
Thank you for everything you've done in this space.
Yes.
And thank you for being so inspiring with your story and brave enough and courageous to share it with everyone. So
well, thank you for having me on. Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year again. Thank you so much. And we'll put all the details for Kate in the show notes, listeners. And we're sending you lots of love.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors. Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And don't forget to take the Midlife Reset Audit now to receive personalised insights into what's holding you back from living your healthiest, happiest midlife. So go ahead and take the audit now at themidlifementors.com/audit.